If you've ever tried growing moringa from seed and thought to yourself, man, these seeds are stubborn or super slow to germinate, well, I'm going to show you how I got my moringa seeds to quickly germinate in 5 days. And that is without soaking, without doing the paper towel method, or using any type of fancy equipment. So I was recently at a friend's house and she has a little mini food forest in her backyard. While we were outside, her two very large moringa trees caught my attention. I noticed that there were a lot of dried moringa pods on these trees. So I asked her for one of the dried pods, which she was more than happy to give to me. So I brought it home with me and I wanted to try out different methods of getting these seeds to germinate because I do understand that they are a little difficult to get to germinate. It takes a little bit of time. Now, before I get into the details, I will say right off the bat that moringa has a long taproot that does not like to be disturbed. So if you're going to try the method that I used to germinate these seeds in under a week, then I suggest that you place the seeds outside where you're planning on growing them and directly sow them in ground and wait for them to sprout up. Now, if that's not possible and you need to start them in containers or need to grow them in containers, then start with larger seed starting pots, ones that are a little bit longer, or even solo cups to give the taproot enough room to grow and to mature. That way you can transfer them to larger containers once they're ready to be up potted. For the purpose of this experiment, I started with small seed starting trays. So in the future, I will be directly sowing them in ground, but I'll show you what I did to not disturb those little tap roots as much as possible. So I'll get right into my experiment to show you the two different ways that I tried getting these seeds to germinate. Moringa seeds have a papery husk around them, and then beneath that husk, you're going to find a hard outer shell. Inside of that shell is the actual seed. So what I'm doing here is carefully removing the hard outer shell. Now I do have some nails, not too long, but enough to actually peel this off. If you don't have nails, you can use nail clippers or something like that to try to clip off the end of the outer shell so that you can, at that point, easily remove the rest of it. And now you can see the difference between a regular moringa seed and one that has been removed from the outer shell. Now you do have to be careful with this process. It can be a little tricky if you are accidentally a little too forceful, like I was with this seed. You can completely crack and ruin the inner seed. So you definitely have to be careful. I started peeling the outer coating back, and I guess I squeezed it a little too hard and it completely cracked the inner seed, as you can see here. So this one we can't use, but thankfully there were 15 seeds in this pod. So I will continue on with the rest of them. As you can see, I have two different seed starting trays in front of me. I'm going to use one of these trays for the seeds that I'm removing the outer shell on, and then the other one, I'm just going to sow the moringa seeds as they are without removing anything. I'm going to leave the paper husk on, leave the outer shell on, and see how they do compared to how these do. Now, there are so many reasons why you would want to grow moringa in your backyard or your food forests. It not only grows extremely fast, I mean, this is a crazy prolific, very fast grower in the heat. It's drought tolerant and it does very well in poor soil conditions, which is great, especially here in Florida. And the good thing is as it grows taller and bushier, it will provide dappled light to your fruit trees or vegetable crops, whatever you're growing that prefers dappled light. And because it's a prolific grower, you can use the leaves to feed livestock like chickens, goats, cows. You can use it yourself. It is a nutritional powerhouse. It has medicinal qualities that you can look into. I like to use them not only fresh, but I like to dry them and then form them into a powder so that I can add to smoothies or just quickly take a shot of the juice by mixing it with either juice or water. I can also add a little bit to teas. So there's a lot of ways that you can use moringa, either fresh or dried. And the entire thing is edible and has different purposes. So the leaves, the flowers, the seed pods, the bark, the inner gum, everything is edible. You can also use this as a chop and drop, especially at the end of the year before it gets cold in the wintertime. You can take it all the way down to maybe 3, 4 feet. It will grow back in the spring. So you can use all of that to feed your existing fruit trees or any plants or crops that you're currently growing. It improves your soil. It's a nitrogen fixer. And another really cool thing that I actually recently learned about is that it purifies water, which is wild. So as you saw, the tray on the left has the seeds that are fully intact. I'm just pushing all of them down now. I'm going to give them a good water, but I'm also going to make sure that I mark the tray that has the seeds that I removed the outer shells on. And all I had nearby was a straw. So I'm using a piece of straw. Now I'll take these outside where they will stay. It is hot outside. It's June here in Florida. But if I was doing this in the winter time, I would use a heat mat. 5 days later, this is what we have. We have two already that have sprouted from the tray that I removed the outer shells on. I also made sure the soil stayed moist. And just 2 days after that, I have another one that sprouts up from the tray that I removed the outer shells on. So far, 3 out of 6. And if I look back here to the tray where the seeds are intact, I don't have any germination just yet. So with the first two that germinated, I went ahead and transplanted them in ground, and I did it really early because I didn't want the taproot reaching the bottom of the cells. The very next day, you can see that I still have the one that I left in here, but I also have one that sprouted up and a brand new one that's just now emerging from the soil. So 5 out of 6 so far in 8 days. And if we look back here, the seeds that stayed intact have not germinated yet. So now I'll show you how I transplanted these two in ground and why I did it so fast. Here's one of them. And the other one is over here. I made sure the soil was moist so that it was all intact. And I did it before the taproot actually reached the bottom of this little cell. And I know this can get a little tricky, so it's better to just take those bare seeds, place a couple of them in the location where you are planning on growing your moringa, covering it up and keeping the soil moist until you see germination. 10 days after I planted these seeds, now we have 100% germination here. And if we check on our seeds that stayed intact, we actually have one that sprouted, which is great. If you're still here with me watching, I want to thank you for sticking around to the end. I will catch you on our next video.